SCAP/CED/2020/INF/3, reducing straw residue burning and air pollution through sustainable agricultural mechanization, INF4, and sustainable cities post-coronavirus disease pandemic, INF5. Before proceeding actually to the deliberations, let me please first invite the Secretary of the Committee to deliver some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those who are joining by Kudo are reminded to refer to the technical guide and request to speak by pressing the appropriate button in Kudo. Those in the room, please raise your flags and you will be put on the list to speak at the appropriate time. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretariat, and I'm pleased to assume my responsibilities of moderating the discussions under the agenda items 3A, 3B, which I indicated actually in the beginning. And the committee will get an overview of environmental solutions to help accelerate climate actions and combating air pollution, sustainable resource and ecosystem use for human well-being, and sustainable cities. This session is structured as follows. We will start with the short presentations by the Secretariat introducing the theme of this session, followed by the invited keynote experts with their presentations, and then I will open the floor for statements. Participants are requested to hold off requesting the floor till then. I repeat again, when we arrive to that point of time, then the floor will be open for those willing to take the floor, but you are kindly requested to hold off requesting the floor till then. To start the session, I would like to welcome Mr. Carrigan, Chief of the Sustainable Urban Development Section, Environment and Development Division of UNESCAP. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a PowerPoint presentation that has to be put up. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to highlight some of the key messages from the analysis developed by the Secretariat in preparation for this agenda item. To start, environmental priorities must be at the core of building back better. Protecting nature, restoring ecosystems, and climate action can all help to mitigate the risks from future pandemics. Safeguarding ecosystem health is essential to ensure human health, while improving air quality will reduce vulnerabilities to disease, contribute to climate action, and enhance the livability of cities, which themselves must be well planned and build resilience to shocks and pandemics. While COVID temporarily reduced GHG emissions, forecasts indicate a quick rise back to 2019 emission levels and beyond. Collectively, the current pledges from countries are not sufficient to establish a path that will get us to the levels to achieve the well below 2-degree scenario and the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Climate Agreement. With this urgency, and while many member states are in the process of developing NDCs, allow us to propose some priorities. Developing carbon pricing and markets, phasing out coal, investing in clean, green, low carbon development, and enhancing national enabling conditions. SCAP has teamed with several partners, including the Institute of Global Climate and Ecology, the Russian Federation, Germany, UN Environment Program, UN Development Program, COICA, and others to develop tools and methodologies that will support raising climate ambitions of member states. The 2011-2020 UN Decade on Biodiversity is now coming to an end. The midterm review of the Aichi biodiversity targets indicated that there was either no significant overall progress or actual regression. As illustrated in the graph before you, the Asia-Pacific region and the subregions are not on track to secure the global environmental commons on freshwater, marine or coastal or land and forest ecosystems, and biodiversity. As previously mentioned this morning, the pandemic, zoonosis, has further underscored the need to safeguard ecosystems for human health, while climate change further compounds the challenges to do so. We would also draw your attention to the ocean-specific information document prepared for this committee, with particular information on the need to advance cooperation on the marine environment, and also remind delegations of the issues of ocean health in the theme study from the 76th Commission session, as well as those issues discussed recently during the Asia-Pacific Day for the Ocean. Actions to support nexus approaches to biodiversity, to adopt circular economy models and sustainable patterns of consumption and production, and to develop nature-centered approaches are important priorities to consider. We also highlight the need for stakeholder engagement, improved data and technology, and promoting integrated environmental policies at all levels of governance. As you may know, more than 90% of the region's population is currently exposed to air pollution levels that increase susceptibility to diseases. And 30 of the most air polluted cities are currently in Asia, with pollution sources ranging from burning of raw coal to vehicle emissions and agricultural burning. And in this regard, Asia is the largest producer of annual crop residue that is currently burned. Mainstreaming science-based solutions, including transitions to clean energy, energy efficiency, and low-emission vehicles and industry are priorities. The innovative use of technologies, such as satellite and machine learning, can identify pollution hotspots and inform policy interventions. Sustainable agriculture practices can replace biomass burning, while incentives can facilitate mechanization solutions. An information document has also been developed which elaborates further these solutions. At the local level, cities must develop air pollution action plans to mitigate urban air pollution. And we must continue to raise awareness through activities such as the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies. City actions, as noted this morning by our Executive Secretary, are important going forward. In 2019, the region's population became majority urban for the first time and is expected to grow through 2050 to 3.5 billion people, the equivalent of adding 4 Tokyo-sized cities every year from now until then. Cities in Asia are projected to contribute more than half of the region's rise in GHG emissions over the next 20 years, making local climate action an imperative. Cities which have been at the forefront of the pandemic, with more than 90% of all cases in urban areas, and municipal revenues declining as a result by up to 25%, face increasing challenges to manage solid waste, plastics, air quality, and loss of biodiversity, and to close their widening infrastructure gaps. ESCAP developed guidance for future urbanization based on 4 thematic priorities that you see here on the right: urban and territorial planning, urban resilience, smart and inclusive cities, and urban finance, supported by policy pathways for future growth and recoveries to build sustainable, resilient, and inclusive cities. Looking at the future more broadly, the Secretariat has undertaken futures thinking, as we know that business as usual will fall short of delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. We have identified big ticket items that are projected to shape the region's environmental future. They include rural and urban dynamics, rise of sustainability consciousness, food systems, the rising demand for natural resources and shifts in ownership, and environmental governance. We are working towards 4 plausible environmental futures around the environmental priorities being discussed here at the committee. We thank member state representatives and experts across the region who participated in this initiative, and we draw your attention to the information document developed on this process. To summarize, here are pathways to build back better by accelerating actions across environmental domains. First, place environmental priorities at the core of recoveries. Second, accelerate climate action, including investments in decarbonization of energy and transport. Third, continue regional dialogue and cooperation on carbon markets and mechanisms to finance nationally determined contributions. Fourth, develop integrated environmental policies and circular economy approaches. Fifth, enhance clean air regulations and national legislation to reduce pollutants. Next, leverage technologies and enhance data to inform environmental policymaking. Next, support local authorities to promote sustainable urbanization. And finally, enhance environmental governance at all levels. You see before you the issues for consideration for the committee. Consider suggesting regional activities to enhance climate ambitions and ecosystem health, mainstream clean air solutions, promote sustainable urbanization, and strengthen environmental governance. We look forward to your statements on this agenda item. Honorable Chair, I return the floor to you.
Thank you, Secretary. And we will now hear from Professor Hong-Sik Cho, Professor of Environmental Law, Seoul National University. The floor is yours, and I understand that will be the presentation through Kudo. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to begin by expressing my gratitude to Unesco for inviting me to speak at this session of the Committee on Environment and Development. As we continue to face the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have finally seen a glimpse of hope with the news of vaccines. We should note, however, that this fight against COVID-19 may just be a prelude to what we may face with the climate crisis. Unfortunately, there are neither personal protective equipment nor vaccines for climate change. As Pope Francis said, while God always forgives, nature never forgives. The international community has never played down climate change, but we used to believe that there would be more time for us to prepare. However, we are experiencing the stark realities of climate change more frequently than ever before. Natural disasters and climate abnormalities such as typhoons, floods, wildfires, not to mention the ice melting in the Arctic, have all become a new normal that hit the Asia-Pacific region this year harder than ever before. And it makes us worry that climate crisis might be really just around the corner. I believe this is the reason why the so-called green issues have become a high priority issue globally and a political agenda domestically. As we navigate through these challenging global issues, such as COVID-19 and climate change, one thing we realize is that no one country can tackle them alone. Multilateral efforts are essential and perhaps the only way out. As in the case of COVID-19, the challenges posed by climate change have no respect for boundaries, and the sustainability of our planet cannot be assured by efforts of a single country. For this reason, the combined efforts and approach of the international community are most needed. That brings us to the importance of multi-stakeholders engagement. As we pursue multilateral cooperation to address these challenges, it is also becoming very clear that governments cannot do it alone. We need the businesses, civil societies, and the people to join in on this effort. If we can bring together the commitments of all stakeholders, we will have a much better chance to address the hurdles ahead. The next question may be, what do we do with the diverse actors on the different levels gathered together? The first step would be the well-known cliche, building back better and greener. As we struggle from the economic difficulties caused by the pandemic, we need to understand that this is an opportunity for us to reset what we have been doing wrong by going green. As government seeks for recovery packages, we need to make sure that this time around we pursue green stimulus packages that will help us build back our economy in a more sustainable manner. The second step is aligning this short-term goal with our long-term climate ambitions. As we prepare to implement the Paris Agreement, our recovery packages, NDCs, and LEDs need to be coordinated. The encouraging news is that China, Japan, and Korea have all announced carbon neutral goals in recent months. Long-term commitments are not too easy to make. We are literally trying to fly into uncharted territory, and it is very natural for us to be prudent. But let us go back 30 years from now to 1990. We may have imagined that in 2020, we will all have and use mobile phones. But we could not imagine that we would be watching movies and video programs with such high quality images, and even make video clips with our devices. Development of technology will lead us to a whole new level of life in 30 years from now. With such confidence, if we continue to build on these ambitions by bringing together more commitments within the Asia Pacific, we can certainly project a brighter future for our next generation. The global dynamics of climate policy is changing. I believe we will see further encouragement when the US rejoins Paris next year. I sincerely hope that the Asia Pacific region will lead the efforts to address climate change with ambitious policies and measures for both immediate and long-term goals with the participation and engagement of diverse stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your very telling presentation. And now I will open the floor for statements, and representatives of member states, international organizations, major groups, and other stakeholders may request floor using the request to speak button. And I have to remind everyone to limit their interventions to no longer than 2 minutes in length to allow all participants the opportunity to speak. And what I see actually on the request list, it's the Republic of Korea, and I give floor to the Republic of Korea. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by extending my gratitude to the Secretariat for its efforts in suggesting policy options and regional cooperation approach in 4 key thematic areas. Per the current agenda, my intervention will focus on raising climate ambitions and safeguarding health. As stated in the paper, raising climate ambition is fundamental in safeguarding ecosystem health, and that is the reason Korea has taken the difficult yet inevitable path toward carbon neutrality. We are in the process of finalizing our updated NDC and 2050 LEDS to be submitted before the end of the year per the Paris Agreement. But let me briefly share with you Korea's 2050 carbon neutral strategy, recently adopted through intense intergovernmental discussions. This strategy is Korea's endeavor to move from adaptive greenhouse gases reduction toward proactive climate responses to achieve net zero emissions, economic growth, and people's livelihood at the same time. The strategy is centered around 4 key areas. First, decarbonization of every economic sector, including energy, green mobility, and buildings, together with climate change adaptation. Second, development of low carbon industries, including hydrogen economy and circular economy. Third, just transition with regional and stakeholder engagement. And fourth, strengthening the implementation base for carbon neutrality transition, including emissions trading scheme, green finance, R&D, and international cooperation. To oversee the progress and ensure full implementation of these plans, a presidential committee will be established as well. Distinguished delegates, Korea will strive to keep raising our climate ambitions and to reflect our 2050 carbon neutrality strategy into our NDC before its next communication deadline in 2025. We will also make use of every opportunity to share our experience and provide any support that our fellow members may need. In particular, the second Partnership for Green Growth and Global Goals 2030 Summit, P4G Summit in short, is scheduled to be held late May next year. And this will be an opportune moment for governments and private sectors to gather political will for Green New Deal and carbon neutrality to serve as a milestone for the UNFCCC COP26 in November. Also, as kindly informed to you by Deputy Executive Director Musuya in her opening remarks, Korea is hosting the 4th Forum of Asia Pacific Ministers and Environment Authorities in early October next year to support our regional colleagues in the lead up to the resumed session of UNIA 5 in 2022. Moreover, Korea will further contribute to regional efforts for tackling climate change and safeguarding ecosystem health through, among others, UNESCO's Seoul Initiative Network on Green Growth, UNEP's Partnership of Action on Green Economy, Northeast Asia Clean Air Partnership, ASEAN-Korea Carbon Dialogue, and ASEAN-Korea Environment and Climate Change Dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished delegates, we cannot afford to miss this crucial moment in history, and Korea will do its part to help achieve green and inclusive recovery for all. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you, Mr. I thank you, the delegate of the Republic of Korea, and the next representative on the speakers list is the delegate from Kazakhstan. The floor is yours. Прошу вас.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first express my thanks to the UN ESCAP Secretariat for organizing this important event in these extraordinary times. We might be divided by distance, but are connected in our common goal. Climate change today represents one of the most pressing global challenges, and it should be treated with the same urgency as COVID-19. As a landlocked developing state, Kazakhstan is already experiencing the dire consequences of climate change. The average temperature in Kazakhstan is rising twice as fast as global average. Already today, we witness increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events at the shocking speed at which the glaciers in our mountains are retreating. And in these times, more than ever, we need decisive actions to slow down the rise of global temperature. Kazakhstan has identified deep decarbonization of economy as one of the long-term priorities. Next year, we will adopt a low emissions development strategy until 2050, which will serve us a roadmap in achieving deep decarbonization. We also plan to plant 2 billion trees in the next 5 years to increase carbon sequestration. Another important area is climate change adaptation. By the end of this year, a new environmental code will be adopted in Kazakhstan. For the first time, it will include a separate chapter on adaptation to climate change. In other words, we are making climate change adaptation a legal norm and a requirement in policy planning. The adaptation process will include vulnerability assessment in the regions and in 4 sectors, specifically agriculture, water resources, forestry, and disaster risk reduction, and development respective adaptation measures to enhance resilience. The global pandemic does not only represent a challenge, but also an opportunity for us to revisit the systems we have created and build back better. Our future development should be greener with neutral impact on climate. The climate goals should also be in synergy with sustainable development goals and be based on principles of just transition. Before closing, Kazakhstan would like to express its sincere thanks to UNESCAP for its continuous support in climate-related activities. Recently, we received, thanks to the government of the Russian Federation, a capacity development support on reporting under the Paris Agreement, and we hope to see more of such support provided by the UN ESCAP Secretary to the whole region of Central Asia. Thank you.
Благодарю вас, делегация Казахстана. Спасибо большое за выступление. And I now give the floor to Timor-Leste.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Excellency, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Timor-Leste is in the view that climate change is one of the global challenges that all countries are facing today. The impact of climate change, as drought, floods, landslides, sea level rise, and destructive winds have been negatively affecting our socioeconomic development and environmental quality. The most vulnerable those who are limited financial, technological, and human capacity to adapt to the impact of the climate change, specifically the least developing countries and small island developing states. To address the challenge, almost all countries in the world adopt the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and Paris Agreement with main objective of stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration to prevent dangerous anthropogenic intervention with the climate system, as well as to limit the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. As a party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and Paris Agreement, Timor-Leste is fully engaged to take more ambitious climate action on low carbon development, but with no emission reduction target. The ambition will be primarily focused on enhancing strategies, planning of strategic plans, action for green low carbon development, reflecting its national circumstances based on Article 4.6 of the Paris Agreement. To this end, the country is in the process of finalizing its first national climate change policy to tackle climate change adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage. Through this policy, the government of Timor-Leste will continue to build a strong low-carbon economy for achieving sustainable development, addressing the climate change. Renewable energy is one of the critical areas of our focus in dealing with mitigation measures, specifically for rural communities. In the fact, we reduce our national greenhouse gas emission a total of 1,438.80 gigagram CO emission, equivalent from forest and other land use sector in 2014 compared to the period before. We have planned and have been implementing action to plan 100,000 trees per year for reforestation, which be seen as a source for carbon seal. For adoption, Timor-Leste has formulated its first national adaptation plan to the UNFCCC. It covers all climate vulnerable sectors with objective to reduce vulnerability and build adaptive capacity for increasing more climate resilience. This document will be submitted to UNFCCC Secretariat by the end of this year. We hope that all the adaptation elements under the National Adaptation Plan will be fully supported by finance mechanism of the UNFCCC, specifically the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility, as well as Adaptation Fund under the Paris Agreement. Currently, we are implementing various climate change and climate change adaptation activities that will identify under the National Adaptation Program for action, aiming at adaptation, urgent and immediately adaptation measures. To conclude, we believe that these new climate change policy plans and action are part of our nationally determined contributions, ambition for tackling climate change, and as required by the Paris Agreement. We'll continue to do more and continue to seek support from our development partner to implement such policy. To end, I would like to request Mr. Chair if this effort can be reflected in the Chair summary. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Timor-Leste. Сейчас мне доставляет особое удовольствие предоставить слово заместителя председателя правительства Сахалинской области Вячеславу Владимировичу Аленькову.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые делегаты, позвольте сделать сообщение от лица правительства Сахалинской области Российской Федерации. Меня зовут Вячеслав Аленьков, я заместитель председателя правительства Сахалинской области. Со мной также специальный представитель губернатора Сахалинской области по климату Гершенкова Динара. 12 декабря исполняется 5 лет Парижскому соглашению, одной из целей которого является достижение баланса между антропогенными выбросами и поглощениями парниковых газов в середине 21 века. Сахалинская область в рамках общих усилий Российской Федерации по выполнению Парижского соглашения планирует достичь углеродной нейтральности на Сахалине и Курилах до 2025 года. На Сахалине 90% выбросов связаны с выработкой тепловой и электрической энергии. При этом островной регион обеспечивается собственными энергоресурсами, в которых уголь исторически играл ведущую роль. Чтобы уходить от угольной генерации, правительством Сахалинской области приняты меры по поддержке, по переводу всех котельных региона с угля на газ до 2025 года. Это обеспечит снижение выбросов парниковых газов более чем в 2 раза. Приняты программы по развитию газомоторного и электрического транспорта. Государство субсидирует перевод личного и коммерческого транспорта с бензина на газ. Применяется нулевая ставка процентная транспортного налога для электромобилей. Всего до конца 2020 года в регионе планируется ввести в эксплуатацию около 15 зарядных станций для электромобилей. Также стимулирующей мерой является выделение бесплатных парковочных мест для электрического транспорта на муниципальных парковках. Имеются планы по развитию водородной энергетики, в том числе по запуску пассажирского железнодорожного транспорта на водороде, а также электрогенерации на основе возобновляемых источников энергии и СПГ, что особенно актуально для обеспечения энергоснабжения изолированных районов. То есть в регионе начата реализация конкретных мер по осуществлению энергетического перехода и все более активному использованию передовых технологических решений. По предварительным оценкам, порядка 80% антропогенных выбросов поглощается лесами Сахалинской области. Будут и далее приняты меры по устойчивому управлению лесами для поддержания и приумножения поглотительной способности лесов. На базе Сахалинского государственного университета в этом году был создан Сахалинский климатический центр для методологической поддержки реализуемой климатической политики, проведения научно-исследовательских работ, а также подготовки кадров, в том числе в рамках программ дополнительного образования по вопросам климата и устойчивого развития для органов власти и бизнес-сообщества. Важный момент. От того, какой инвестиционный климат будет сформирован на перспективу, во многом будет зависеть успех наших усилий по снижению антропогенной нагрузки на климат Земли. В России многими компаниями, в том числе представленные на Сахалине и Курилах, внедряются меры по сокращению выбросов парниковых газов, применению инновационных технологических и инвестиционных решений, совершенствуется добровольная климатическая отчетность. При этом считаем принципиально важным, чтобы СКАТа в своей работе на климатическом направлении выстраивала работу с ориентиром на конструктивную консолидацию усилий всех стран при учете социально-экономической специфики государств-членов, избегая протекционистских мер углеродного регулирования. Мы считаем, что сохранение климата – дело каждого, и никто не должен оставаться в стороне. Поэтому приоритетное внимание будем уделять вопросам просвещения и пропаганды устойчивого развития, ответственного образа жизни, создавая условия для реализации многих возможностей. Правительство Сахалинской области планирует сформировать инфраструктуру для запуска климатических проектов на территории региона, следуя международным стандартам такой деятельности. Мы заинтересованы в сотрудничестве с соседями, готовы изучать их опыт, делиться своими подходами в решении задач, поставленных по Минским соглашениям. Спасибо, господин председатель.
Благодарю вас, Вячеслав Владимирович. And now I have on the speakers list Ms. Afiza Binti Idris, Malaysia. The floor is yours, madam. Thank you.
Chairman, for giving Malaysia the floor again. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is committed to reduce our GHG emissions under the Paris Agreement. Acknowledging the energy sector as the main GHG emitter, it is the main sector that we prioritize our efforts in to reduce emissions. The energy sector, built upon decades of coherent policy making and organic growth, is pivoted along balancing the three principles of energy trilemma, namely energy security, affordability, and sustainability. For the past several years, the conversation has focused more on the energy-climate nexus, which entails fresh insight on how best we pursue the energy aspirations without losing sight of environmental objectives. Additionally, the pace of energy transition, especially the adoption of cleaner energy pathway, is expected to quicken in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are aware that in some areas, we may have to consolidate further in protecting our policy space, reinvigorate the governmental mechanism, and enhance the governance in line with the environment, social, and governance principles. Malaysia is keen on finding the right narratives, achieving consensus building at system level, and escalating institutionally with a view towards making the sustainability aspirations to be more explicit in the national development agenda. Lastly, we would like to share our national perspective and reach out to UNESCO regional partners as there are possibilities to embark on mutually beneficial multilateral collaboration. Mr. Chairman, on BioD, Malaysia recognizes the importance to safeguard the biodiversity and natural ecosystems in ensuring planetary health. In this regard, continuous efforts are undertaken to conserve and protect the biodiversity, especially the endangered flora and fauna, as well as natural ecosystem, both land and marine ecosystems. In terms of managing marine plastic pollution, the roadmap towards zero single-use plastics was developed in 2018 to phase out single-use plastics in Malaysia. In addition, we are currently developing a circular economy roadmap for plastics and also a policy specifically to address marine litter. Mr. Chairman, Malaysia welcomes the initiatives under the UN Decade of Ocean Science. As a member of IOC UNESCO, Malaysia is actively involved in various research disciplines, including ocean observation and capacity building. Collaboration with marine scientists is strengthened through a national coordinating committee looking into leveraging expertise for the positive growth of socioeconomic and environmental sustainability. Furthermore, the promotion towards marine biodiversity is continued through regional collaboration in Coral Triangle Initiative, CTI. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And I see now the flag of the distinguished representative of Japan in the room. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me a floor. Spasiba. Let me briefly explain Japan's concrete actions and initiative. On June 2019, at the G20 Energy and Environment Ministers meeting, Asia-Pacific Adaptation Information Platform, AP-PLAT, was established with the kind support of Indonesia and the participation of Thailand. Next March, Japan will host the 7th Asia-Pacific Adaptation Forum online. Toward this forum, we are in the process of making it accessible to anyone for free to CMIP6, which is the data of the future weather change. Air pollution in the Asia-Pacific region is of grave concern and has to be addressed for sustainable development. In this regard, monitoring network in East Asia, EANet, established in 2001, works effectively as an intergovernmental initiative to create a common understanding on the state of acid deposition problem in East Asia. The Chairman, with 13 countries in the region, Japan will extend the scope of its activities to the whole air pollution issues. So we expect more countries and organizations to join this important initiative to make substantial progress for air pollution in the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Arigato. Спасибо. Thank you. I now see actually, I saw, as a matter of fact, the indication of the wish to speak of the representative of Bangladesh, but I do not see it anymore on the screen. If it is indeed the case, so then we proceed further with the speakers list. And I have the pleasure to give the floor to the representative of France.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm not sure you can see me.
On peut vous écouter bien. Merci.
Vous m'entendez, vous ne me voyez pas, visiblement, malgré la caméra allumée. On va essayer d'améliorer ça. Voilà. OK, merci beaucoup, Dear Excellency, dear distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you for the Commission to organize this session. If you allow me, I will make the statement in French. La France souhaite mentionner plusieurs points généraux autour de l'accord de Paris et du relèvement d'ambition. D'abord, l'accord de Paris pour le climat, vous le savez, le cadre d'action mondial pour lutter contre le réchauffement climatique. Il est quasiment universel avec 194 signatures et 189 ratifications. L'objectif de l'accord de Paris est de limiter d'ici la fin du siècle le réchauffement climatique à 2 degrés, voire 1,5 degré par rapport à l'époque pré-industrielle. Nous sommes loin de cet objectif. L'Organisation météorologique mondiale estime que pour la période 2016-2020, on a noté la période la plus chaude jamais enregistrée. La baisse du niveau des émissions liées aux épisodes de confinement dans le contexte de crise pandémique est passagère et ne suffira malheureusement pas à inverser la tendance, laquelle est liée aux émissions passées, à la durée de vie des gaz à effet de serre dans l'atmosphère et à l'inertie du système climatique. Pour que l'accord de Paris soit pleinement mis en œuvre et produise les effets escomptés, il incombe à toutes les États parties de relever leur ambition climatique le plus rapidement possible, et d'ici à la COP26, les nouvelles contributions déterminées au niveau national, les NDC, sont attendues d'ici la fin de l'année, selon la lettre de l'accord de Paris. À l'heure où devrait initialement s'ouvrir la COP26, seuls 5% des émissions mondiales de gaz à effet de serre sont couvertes par les 16 NDC remises à la Convention cadre des Nations Unies sur le changement climatique. La France et ses partenaires agissent sur plusieurs volets pour accélérer la dynamique de relèvement d'ambition des États parties. D'abord, elle soutient l'objectif proposé par la Commission européenne d'au moins 55% de réduction nette des émissions en 2030 par rapport à 1990. Ensuite, elle valorise, ainsi que vous l'avez dit, l'anniversaire des 5 ans de l'accord de Paris avec le sommet de l'ambition. Le secrétaire général des Nations Unies avec le Royaume-Uni, l'Italie, la Chine et la France co-organisent ce sommet de l'ambition le 12 décembre prochain, jour anniversaire de l'accord de Paris. Tous les États signataires de l'accord de Paris ont été invités et plusieurs pays feront des annonces significatives sur leur relèvement de l'ambition qui portera sur un ou plusieurs des 3 piliers de l'accord de Paris, atténuation, adaptation ou finance. La France, enfin, formule le vœu que les plans de relance post-Covid puissent investir massivement dans la décarbonation de leur économie. Au niveau européen, l'accord de juillet 2020 sur le plan de relance prévoit que 30% des fonds contribuent à l'atteinte des objectifs climatiques de l'Union, tandis que l'ensemble de ces moyens devront respecter le principe d'innocuité environnementale, d'où notre arme, et ne pas porter atteinte à l'environnement. Une partie de ces fonds devra également contribuer à la protection de la biodiversité. Enfin, à ce titre, la France soutient la motion de l'Union internationale pour la conservation de la nature qui porte sur la nature dans la ville, qui a été retenue en vue de son prochain congrès. La France est favorable au renforcement et aux usages des solutions fondées sur la nature pour lutter contre les risques de catastrophes. Ces initiatives permettent de lutter contre les inondations dans les villes et participent également à la résilience côtière, les marées cycloniques, les montées des eaux, la subsidence et la salinisation des nappes phréatiques. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Je vous remercie beaucoup, Monsieur Florent. Merci. And now I see the representative of Bangladesh is back on the speakers list, and I have the honor to give the floor to Mr. Ahmad Shamim from Bangladesh. Bangladesh, the floor is yours. We are waiting for your comments.
Thank you very much once again. And this is my privilege again to speak. My connection is a bit slow, so it may be interference during the time I am talking. I was disconnected already. So let me finish as quick as possible. Considering the prevailing health hazard arising novel COVID-19, socioeconomic and psychological impact, vulnerability, and rising poverty due to COVID-19 at the community level needs to be coordinated. Well, along with the coming disaster of cyclones, floods, and landslides of monsoon seasons, and the rising risk of the dengue fever, diarrhea, cholera in Bangladesh. Due to geographical location, Bangladesh is always susceptible to face various sorts of natural calamities. All these might further aggravate the humanitarian needs of the most vulnerable groups in the country during the coming months. The government of Bangladesh has already mobilized a net-worthy stimulus package to support the affected injustice and the commonly people, which need to be coordinated over a longer period of 12 to 18 months and maybe more than another 5-year plans. Moreover, humanitarian support should reach to the most vulnerable communities, which need to be targeted, outlined, and delivered. The government is stressing some of the specific points that I am mentioning. Number one, economic implications subjected to the spatial and the geographical locations based on the vulnerabilities. Two, perform proper risk management and risk assessment and risk communication for the deadly multiple climate change induced hazard. Identification of vulnerable hotspot with proper preventive and response measures. A comprehensive climate-based disease surveillance system to be initiated to ensure minimum damage with quick recovery policy. Climate-based disaster and health insurance system, and develop a disease-related data to archive those properly with maximum accessibility from different corner, ensuring the distribution of climate financing to the most of the vulnerable areas, strengthen the healthcare facilities and preparedness for the potential humanitarian crisis with special emphasis on child and women in the remote rural areas. Whatever will be the scenario, we are ensuring emergency preparedness for initial response and proper implementation of initiatives for resilience building. Bangladesh is working
We actually lost connection. In case we recover the connection with the representative of Bangladesh, when we come back again to the statement, and with your indulgence, colleagues, we will let the delegate of the Bangladesh to continue with his comments. Meanwhile, to save time, I see now the representative of Unesco on the speakers list, and I give the floor to the representative of Unesco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies and delegates, and all dear friends and colleagues. So UNESCO and its Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, UNESCO IOC, firmly believe science, technology, and innovation are key elements or driving force for the sustainable development. As such, the upcoming UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development that will begin from next year indeed provides a grand opportunity for all member states in the region to accelerate the development of ocean science solutions to the ocean we want. That is, a clean, a healthy, resilient, productive, predicted, safe, accessible, and inspiring and engaging ocean. So we are expressing our sincere appreciation to ESCAP for its great efforts in bringing the attention of all member states to the importance of ocean. UNESCO and its IOC welcome ESCAP's response to the first call of UN for decade actions, and would like to further encourage ESCAP to continue and synergize its efforts with all relevant UN programs and special agencies to assist our country in the region in accelerating their action for sustainable development of our oceans. So taking this opportunity, UNESCO and its IOC would like to call upon our all member states to give due priority to ocean science, technology, innovations in your national development agenda, to improve the ocean science policy interface, and also to enhance investment on ocean science development and collaboration, and benefiting as well from the decade through our increased interaction with all relevant ocean stakeholders in the co-design, solution-oriented ocean science, service, and technology that are relevant to policy, management, and decision-making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, UNESCO. And we do not see any improvement in connection with Bangladesh. And then I offer the floor to the representative of major groups and other stakeholders. Roots for Equity, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak in this very important event. I'm Wali Haider from Roots for Equity, also the co-chair of APRSM and the farmer constituency focal point of APRSM. Today, with utmost concern, as the landless rural people have been among the most vulnerable to the impact of the COVID global pandemic. With them are the small farmers with precarious land ownership or control, and those from landless peasant families forced to work as a casual laborers in agriculture, plantation, and engage in hard labor and odd jobs, or as so-called informal workers in urban areas. Today's food system is highly unsustainable and hazardous due to high environmental and economic costs and huge greenhouse emission, extremely unhealthy with persistent malnutrition and obesity, susceptible to price spike and artificial shortage, etc. Environmental organizations are disappointed that the work of the thousands of environmental defenders, many of whom have made immense contribution to the environment at the most of their life, are not acknowledged. We want this should be taken notice to the fact that environmental activism is becoming an increasingly dangerous undertaking and propose ways and means for their protection in the international environmental governance. There are increasing concern of environmental impact of free trade agreement, especially between developing and developed countries. We urge all the policy arenas with respect to environment should be concerned of it. We notice the faith in science, data, and digitalization is a very hard focus have been given to this kind of new technologies is understandable. However, failure on collective action by the countries till now is not entirely due to lack of scientific evidences and data, but also due to trade trade competitiveness, lack of incentives and disincentive, and above all, political will. We retaliate as a farmer that sustainable environment, ecosystem, food system and nutrition pattern, uncompromised emphasis on food and seed sovereignty, agroecological centric approaches, and enhanced protection of small and landless farmer, indigenous people, women, and others for food producing, including women farmer as well, and prevent corporate control over agriculture, which neither help farmer nor ecological sustainability. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And we exhausted actually the speakers list for this agenda item. We are moving ahead of schedule, which is pretty good. But before we proceed further, I thank you all for contributions. And I would like for a second to hand over to the Secretariat of the committee for some announcements.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair just mentioned, we are a bit ahead of schedule, but we will proceed to agenda item 4. We would invite the representatives from the Environment Development Division and SPMD to be prepared for their interventions. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Secretariat. And I take this as a sign that we are moving quite efficiently and effectively, which is good. And we are now ready to address agenda item 4, consideration of the future focus of the subprogram, particularly on opportunities to enhance regional cooperation to accelerate environmental actions. We have a document prepared for this specific agenda item, which is opportunities to enhance regional cooperation to accelerate environmental actions, ISCAP/CED/2020/3. I believe that the Secretary of the committee would be willing to speak something right now or make an announcement for his fellow colleagues to go ahead with the presentations, brief presentations.
We will go ahead with the presentation, and Dr. Fatiu is prepared.
Dr. Fatiu, the floor is yours. It is my privilege to give the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I took the liberty to join you in the panel. Mr. Chair, in this agenda item, we are looking at the opportunities for further collaboration, and I wanted to give a kind of small background on how we have developed the paper that you just mentioned. I want to start with the Ministerial Declaration on Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific that it was adopted back in 2017. And Mr. Vice Chair, you were one of the facilitators of the negotiation actually for this declaration. And this declaration resolved to address environmental issues through enhanced climate action, improve efficiency of natural resource management, promote sustainable urban planning inter alia. And in the Ministerial Declaration, the conference requested the Secretariat to support Member States in promoting the review of progress at the regional level on the identified areas. So the subprogram has been developed in response to address the interrelated environmental priorities being identified in the declaration and discussed in the committee. And another important development in the last 3 years after the adoption of this declaration was the increasing support from member states on implementing the declaration. I want to mention here some examples of projects. Japan, for example, has supported the Secretariat recently and following up also on the G20 Osaka Blue Ocean on a project that it's called Closing the Loop, and it's about managing plastic pollution. I want to mention here that the project started as a project, but it develops actually as a platform because it has brought together a lot of regional stakeholders. And it was one of the projects that gave us the opportunity to see that talking with experts from member states, in the case of Japan with the Japan Space Agency, it gave us additional ideas for collaboration. Your country, Mr. Vice Chair, Russell Federation, has supported ESCAP with a project on climate change and how we can implement the Paris Agreement. And that's another case where the project started as a project, but it ends up as a partnership because we do this in cooperation with UNEP and, of course, the UNFCCC to ensure that all this action is within the global framework of climate action. And we had also here the opportunity by engaging additional national experts from your government, and that was the Institute for International Institute for Climate and Ecology, to get more insightful. Another case of very enhanced collaboration, it's from China and the project that supported on sustainable urbanization and on identifying the future needs of cities for sustainable development. And that was another case where we saw that national experts, at this point coming from the National Academy of Science of China, they were able to provide additional guidance for the work we do. Similar with the Republic of Korea, that is financing a project on tackling with air pollution, and there with additional cooperation with national experts from the Ministry of Environment, from Korea Environment Corporation, we managed to have additional opportunities for regional cooperation. Last but not least, in my examples is the project that I supported from France and from the government of France about the sustainable use of natural resources and a focus on agroecology. So I mention these examples, Mr. Chair, because they do provide very concrete action that the member states decided to support in implementation of the declaration. So we see these 3 years that we had a lot of good action. And we do have a lot of opportunities to enhance regional cooperation. We have seen from the analytical work of ESCAP that the environment-related SDGs continue to fall behind progress. While there has been some relatively good achievements in terms of poverty, in terms of education, the SDGs that are related with water, with climate, with sustainable consumption and production are not sufficiently progressing to meet the ambition of the 2030. And the countries also update their national determined contributions. They are preparing for the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. They are prepared for the decade of ocean science, as the colleague from UNESCO mentioned to us. And we see that also there's a very big focus now on issues like plastic pollution, air pollution, and strengthening regional cooperation to tackle these issues. Of course, there's also opportunity to take the action at the local level, and we have seen how cities could act as hubs of sustainable urbanization, that it will help to localize action on SDGs, in particular the environmental SDGs. So looking, Mr. Chair, at these 3 years, on the increasing support of the countries, on the increasing benefits we have when we include national level experts from governments in our dialogue, we came up with the idea that we could establish a technical expert group, that it will facilitate regular exchange of information and technical discussion among experts. And I want to highlight the technical here and the experts from ministries or other public institutions that governments will identify, and ESCAP on environment and sustainable development issues. This expert group could provide technical feedback and guidance to the division on leveraging the work of the Secretariat and the Subprogram to strengthen sub-regional cooperation by helping to accelerate action and monitor progress across the region in key environmental areas. And also, as mentioned this morning from some of the delegates, this technical expert group could be a space for technical discussion among member states between committees session. And here, Mr. Chair, I would like to highlight that as per decision that has been taken also in 2017 in the first Ministerial Summit on Environment and Development during the deliberations, the next committee of 2022 will be held at the ministerial level. So we will need good technical discussion before we go there. And we have shared, excuse me, Mr. Chair, we have shared with a note verbal, and also we have organized an informal meeting of the ACPR, some proposed decisions that they could be placed in relation to this matter. I have them in the table. They are almost identical with the ones that they were shared with you with the note verbal. So one recommendation is that the Committee on Environment and Development recommends that the activities under the subprogram on environment and development continue to be based upon and contribute to the achievement of the objectives and priority areas identified in the Ministerial Declaration on Environment and Development, and of course the regional roadmap for implementing the 2030 agenda. And the proposals regarding the matter brought to the attention of the Commission, the proposed language is that the committee decides to establish within existing resources, and this is in addition to the original language, a technical expert group on environment and development to enhance regional exchange and to mobilize technical expertise in support of ESCAP's effort to accelerate environmental and sustainable development action. And that the committee requests the Secretariat to seek nominations of experts from member states and to convene the first meeting in 2021 of the technical expert group, in which the group will start developing its terms of references as appropriate. Here also we had some tweaking on the language after some advice we received from the member states. And I want to use this opportunity, Mr. Chair, to address also the comment we had in the morning from the delegate of India. Yes, indeed, this group is described here to be to include all ESCAP member states, and by this language that the Secretariat will seek nominations of experts from member states, we will ensure the inclusivity. Let me finish, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the time, by saying that we are looking forward to this enhanced cooperation with member states. The last 3 years, they have proved that the more member states provide expertise, and they are here to shape the technical cooperation projects, to provide ideas for the analytical documents, the more ESCAP could directly respond to the specific requests from the member states. As the Secretariat, our our objective is not, of course, to set the agenda, which is set by the member states, but to support member states to implement what they have agreed. And we believe that such a structure of a technical expert group will work on this way. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'll give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Stefanos, and I thank you very much for your very insightful comments, and which are very important to better understand, to have a better understanding among ourselves how we are going to structurize the work of the committee in the nearest future. And I have to say that I fully concur with you that we are the United Nations, not necessarily only UN, ESCAP, are not sufficiently progressing in implementing those tasks we have before us on the Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically those thematic issues we are considering now on the under the agenda of the committee. I thank you very much again for your comments, and I also know that we have now the brief presentation prepared by Ms. Isabella Hang, Chief Program Planning and Budget Section from the SPMD. So I'm inviting the representative of the SPMD to take the floor. The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. In this presentation, I will aim to give you an overview of the program of work of the subprogram that serves this committee and delivers on the mandates given to ESCAP in the area of environment and development. This subprogram delivers its work through the Environment and Development Division and the Center for Agricultural Mechanization located in Beijing. The Committee on Environment and Development has the substantive purview stated in the ESCAP Commission Resolution 71/1. In addition to the sectoral issue of priority, each committee should be considering the sustainable development goals that are relevant to its work, should ensure that its work contributes to poverty reduction and balanced integration of the three pillars of sustainable development, gender equality, and the priority needs of countries in special situations. The work of ESCAP subprograms are planned on annual basis and are submitted to the member states for approval. According to the format of the program plan, each subprogram has a part on its forward-looking strategy and its highlighted result for the program period. The 2020 result was approved by the General Assembly in the 2020 proposed program budget for ESCAP, and the 2021 result was submitted for approval in the 2021 proposed program budget. The strategic focus areas for subprogram 4, Environment and Development, are to reduce the negative impacts of growth on the natural environment and improve human well-being in urban and rural environments. The result highlighted in the program plan in 2020 is on inclusive and integrated policy processes for effective climate action and natural resources management. And in 2021, we highlighted the more ambitious nationally determined contribution to meet commitments to the Paris Agreement. We are now awaiting the approval of the 2021 program plan and budget and are in the process of preparing for the 2022 program plan. Further to the snapshot of the work directly contributing to the sectoral areas, the subprogram also contributed, especially through its capacity building work, to the cross-cutting areas to be mainstream in all the committees. Some more details are as follows. Given the nature of the work, most of the subprogram's donor-funded projects contribute to balanced integration of the three pillars of sustainable development, enhancing South-South cooperation for integrated trade of agricultural machinery in the Asia and the Pacific region. On the other hand, contributes to both poverty reduction and the balanced integration of the sustainable development pillars. The value of empowerment and participation on implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a project which has gender equality and women's empowerment as a principal objective, while several other projects contribute to gender outcomes in a more limited ways. All projects of the subprogram support the priorities of LDCs, and/or LLDCs and/or SITs. We are now in the process of waiting for the General Assembly's consideration and approval of the 2021 program plan and budget, which is expected to happen in Q4 of 2020, so by the end of this month. Within this year, we will start the preparation of the 2022 program plan, and the above gives the typical timeline of annual planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hang, for your statement. And without any further ado, I'm ready to open the floor for statements from the committee and representatives of member states, associate member states, and observer countries, as well as international organizations and major group and other stakeholders. May request the floor using the appropriate button, request to speak button, and remote participants are encouraged to refer to the CUDO technical guide for further information. I hope it is a friendly one, and I kindly remind everyone to limit their interventions to no longer than 2 minutes to allow all participants the opportunity to speak. So I kindly request the technical support staff from the Secretariat to double check the speakers list. As of now, we do not see so far many registrations on the speakers list as of now. I see now the flag of the representative of Japan. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me a floor. Japan recently announced a commitment of carbon emission to zero by 2050 and joined Climate Ambition Alliance. Japan also is adamant in international cooperation. This year, Japan has extended the support of approximately $1.2 billion in public and private funds. Approximately $3 billion to Green Climate Fund was disbursed. At the G20 summit in 2019, the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision that aims to reduce additional pollution by marine plastic litter to zero by 2050 and G20 implementation framework for action on marine plastic litter were endorsed. We urge all ESCAP members to go through the revised implementation report on this initiative. As Director Forshaw kindly acknowledged, Japan, as part of our effort to realize Osaka Blue Ocean Vision, is currently carrying out the project of closing the loop, scaling up innovation to tackle marine plastic pollution in ASEAN cities. Last but not the least, Japan is determined to take a lead on UNEA process in cooperation with other countries in Asia Pacific. Thank you.
I thank you, delegation of Japan. And since I see the representative of the delegation of UK, Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Secretariat and particularly to Dr. Futo for the update on the proposed future work under this sub-programme. The United Kingdom is supportive of this initiative to set up a technical expert group, and as we currently hold the presidency of COP26 with our partners Italy, we would further encourage the exploration of how this group could specifically be used as a mechanism to support member states in meeting their NDCs. Thank you.
I thank you, distinguished representative of the delegation of UK. And I'm double checking again if there is anybody speaking, wishing to speak on behalf of the national delegations. I do not see any, and if it is not the case, so then I am giving the floor to the representative of the WHO, Mr. Hussein. I'm sorry, I do not see a complete name on the speakers list. Mr. Hussein, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Secretariat for the proposal outlining the initiatives and actions for consideration by the committee to support accelerated implementation of the Regional Cooperation Framework to accelerate environmental actions for building climate resilient health and environments in Asia and the Pacific. We fully support the proposal for the formation of technical working group with the proposed thematic areas and priorities outlined for the 2021 to enhance regional cooperation to accelerate environmental actions, and would like to be part of the technical committee to provide technical inputs and support member states they require. Thank you.
I thank you, the representative of WHO. I see the request for the floor from the representative of Thailand, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thailand is deeply concerned that the environmental impact caused by the high rate of population growth and rapid economic development is the most pressing challenge in the region. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, the degradation of natural resources and environment is temporarily slowed down. We are of the opinion that green recovery approach is a key to build back better. More than that, we are confident that strengthening both regional and global cooperation on environmental issues is very important to build forward. Mr. Chair, we would like to comment on the expert group. We think that the current there are a number of technical expert groups to provide scientific advice and guidance on environmental issues to support implementation of multilateral environmental convention and other environmental commitments. Is the establishment of the technical expert group under ESCAP framework should be considered carefully to avoid overlapping with other existing framework. Moreover, it should not create any extra burden to member countries in terms of financial and other resources, because many developing countries, including Thailand, have a limited number of experts and resources. We therefore suggest that ESCAP member states should have time to consider and come up with a common understanding on clear term of reference before we can make any decision. Thank you.
I thank you, the distinguished representative of Thailand. We have two more speakers on the speakers list. Those are from the major groups and other stakeholders. And if I don't see any other representative of the member state wishing to speak, so then I proceed with giving the floor to the representative of the Roots for Equity. The floor is yours. Looks like we are experiencing difficulty again with the connections. Meanwhile, not to waste time, I see the representative of France wishing to take the floor. So I give the floor to Monsieur Florent Merle from France. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me redonner à nouveau la parole. Simplement pour signifier que la France, via les experts techniques de ses opérateurs implantés dans la région, tels que l'Agence française de développement, le Centre de coopération internationale en recherche agronomique pour le développement et l'Institut de recherche pour le développement, est à disposition pour contribuer aux travaux menés au titre du sous-programme 4 sur l'environnement et le développement. L'AFD est présente depuis 25 ans en Asie, dans 18 pays, et l'opérateur finance 170 projets depuis 2010 pour 4 milliards d'euros d'engagement. Il faut considérer que 61% de ces financements dans la zone ont concerné le secteur des transports, des infrastructures, de l'eau et de l'assainissement, ainsi que la gestion des déchets. Nous soutenons ainsi la création d'un groupe d'experts chargés de travailler à l'action environnementale, en particulier en termes de villes vertes et résilientes, qui pourraient appuyer les travaux de la CESAP, notamment sur les sujets de pollution de l'air, d'amélioration de la santé des habitants et contribution à la biodiversité. Parmi les priorités de ce groupe d'experts, la France propose que celui-ci travaille notamment sur la thématique des solutions fondées sur la nature pour lutter contre les risques de catastrophes. Ce groupe pourrait ainsi proposer des pistes opérationnelles de mise en œuvre pour lutter contre les inondations dans les villes, mais également pour la résilience côtière. S'agissant de la pollution atmosphérique et du climat, la France pourrait contribuer à la mise en place d'un projet régional visant à créer une plateforme de mesures, d'acquisition et de partage de données permettant d'identifier les sources sectorielles et géographiques en s'appuyant sur des compétences régionales et sur une véritable coordination régionale. L'originalité de la France semble être de proposer une approche régionale coordonnée, orientée sur l'acquisition des données et l'identification des sources. Les institutions françaises pourraient intervenir dans le cadre de formations, comme ce fut récemment le cas dans le cadre de l'executive training avec la participation de l'Institut de recherche et développement et d'Air Paris, qui ont développé une approche orientée vers les solutions. Le but de ces travaux dans la région vont vers une appropriation des enjeux au niveau local et régional par les acteurs locaux et vers une montée des compétences de ces derniers. Je vous remercie de votre attention, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Florent, and I will try again now to double check if we have connection with the representative of the Roots for Equity. If you can hear us, Mr. Vali Haidar. Again, trying to get connection with the representative of the Roots for Equity with no explicit, I would say, result. So then I suggest that we give the floor to the next speaker, next registration on the speakers list, the representative of the APRN, Jasmine de Lumang. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you again for acknowledging me and to providing me the space to speak. I'm going to turn my hat off from APRSM and speak on behalf of the Asia Pacific Research Network. The reason why we wanted to be engaged in the technical expert group is because as part of civil society, we commit to have to provide capacity for civil society in engagement, in advocacy and engagement. And this is the reason why we are implementing a project that is funded by the European Commission that is centered around the claiming rights of the civil society organizations and people's organizations in sustainable development goals. Sustainable development. And so one of the things that we are trying to do now is to build the capacity of civil society in terms of research, and not just academic research, but more importantly, research that can be used by communities and other civil society groups from the grassroots and the communities, so that they will be able to have more capacity in terms of identifying what the problems and the solutions of their situation, particularly in relation to natural resources. APRN has a work stream on natural resources, which is composed of our different members who are working on various research programs on natural resources. And this is now then would help in terms of training CSOs in terms of advocacy and engagement, particularly in this kind of platforms. Currently, we're doing virtual trainings for civil society organizations on how to engage the UN and other intergovernmental bodies. And at the same time, we're also being accountable to our constituency. We're doing a self-reflection of our accountabilities as CSOs in the context of the CSO framework on CSODE development effectiveness and the Istanbul principles. And so we encourage our excellencies and our delegations to really provide us, the space, so that truly, when we say that there's really something wrong with the system, we need all stakeholders to be involved, and not just NGOs, but also the people's organizations who are working on the ground, and also the whole private sector. So I think it's important that we build on that, because after all, as many of the speakers has mentioned, the world, we only have one planet, and so it's really important that we build around common actions, and we have the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030 as our social contract. And so we must work together and build partnerships that is based on people-centered development. Thank you so much.
I thank you, Mr. Jasminda. I thank you for your comments, and I hope you can hear me still, because I would like just react, talking the top of my head, and building upon what you said about the involvement of all those working on the ground, not necessarily only NGOs. I have to underscore that as it was established the time of the inception of the Commission on Sustainable Development, the specific major groups and stakeholders were defined, and I have to say that all those major groups and stakeholders, as defined long back at the time of the inception of the Commission on Sustainable Development, but those decisions and these understanding within the UN system remains actually pertinent today as well. So definitely those people and those citizens working on ground, they are encompassed by those major groups. And you rightly mentioned that we have to involve all those who can meaningfully contribute to implementation of the task we have before us. I thank you for your comments. With this, I see no more registrations on the speakers list, neither on the screen nor physically in the room. So we can congratulate ourselves with the strict implementation of the time frame rules established for the session. And I thank all participants for their contributions, comments, statements, observations. It was quite a constructive and productive discussion, which is my utmost hope. And I would like now to ask the Secretariat if the Secretary of the Committee has any announcements to make. So then the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the committee will reconvene tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with session 4, which will be a continuation of agenda item 3, accelerating the implementation of the 2030 Agenda in Asia Pacific through environmental solutions, with a focus in that session on clean air for all and cities for a sustainable future. We ask that remote participants attending the committee through the Kudo platform join early to test their connections. The platform will be open from 9:30 on, and technicians will be available to assist participants with their connections. The Secretariat will distribute by noon tomorrow the draft report of the committee, which is scheduled to be adopted in the closing session that begins at 3 p.m. The report will contain the procedural and organizational aspects of the committee, as well as matters for the Commission. The Chair's summary, which will capture the deliberations, will be subsequently shared with participants within 1 week of the committee. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Mr. Chair, back over to you.
Thank you, dear colleagues. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.